It's like the beginning of TED Talks. If you ever see them on YouTube, they always start with a canned applause. Yeah, fake applause. So my name is Kristoffer Fredriksson, and I'm a concept developer at 24HR. And this is my first professional job. Back in 1999, I made these two little games they put on the website that sold the straight-to-TV movie Pirates of Silicon Valley. And I'll get back to this later. It's not just bragging about having done interactive media since the last millennium. There's also a point with it. And I'm here today to talk about Headless CMS, as you probably read. Or maybe Headless Web, as it's also known, or maybe Decoupled CMS. It's the same thing, maybe, or we could even call it Decoupled Web if we wanted to. It's still early days, so no one knows really what to call it. So I think I'm going to refer to it as headless, plain and simple. But before I get to what is headless, I want to take you on a journey because that's what you're supposed to do nowadays. So we're going to talk about a lot of stuff, and eventually I will let you in on the secrets from that I picked up in the village of headless wisdom. But let's start with trends because everyone loves trends, and I've been doing this for a while, and I noticed there's at least two kinds of trends. There's the instant mega hit that quickly dies, like the fidget. Do you even remember the fidget spinner? No. This is a bit old. But then there's this slow burner that's steadily gaining popularity, and that's the kind of stuff you want to get in on. This you're usually too late. By the time you hear about it, it's already over, and then you have to sell your fidget spinners for 10 crowns. This is the curve for kombucha, if you heard about it. Might be time to read up on it. It's fermented tea. It's not too, it takes a while to appreciate it. And I get these, whenever you see these sort of squiggly lines, it's from trends.google.com, where you can look up the search traffic for different keywords on Google. So it's quite helpful just to try and spot interesting stuff. And to bring it to our domain a bit better, if you look for responsive web design on Google Trends, it looks like this, which is a bit weird because that might implicate that it's over. Let's stop doing responsive web design. But I think this is people nowadays, they know what responsive web design is, so they don't Google what is responsive web design. They started doing that around this time, 2012. And here's another brag thing. This is when we built the first responsive web design for a client, when we actually got paid by Katvig in Denmark. They make children's clothing. And that's the first responsive web design project I was part of. Of course, by that time, no one used the term responsive web design. We just made it because we could and because the client used his Nintendo DS to surf. So we wanted to adapt the page to that. And now let's look at the curve for Headless CMS because it's quite interesting when you see it. You go like, oh, it's already taking off. Maybe we missed it, but you have to also put it into context with other stuff. So if you compare it here to the responsive web design curve, you see we're early days still. You're not too late. This is not a buzzword, I hope. I hope it's not a fidget spinner. I don't think it's a fidget spinner because, and here's my one trend to rule everything that I show every time I get the opportunity to show people something, I show them this. Here's a graph, a lot of effort, a little effort, time, okay? So it used to be that it was really hard to put something on the web. It was enough to just put something on the web and people would look at it. That was all it took. If you had the technical know-how, you would get noticed. That's not the case anymore. Anyone with a smartphone can put a video on the web. It was impossible to put video on the web in the early days. On the other hand, to reach people, to build an audience, That's a lot of hard work today because everyone's on the web, everyone's an influencer, everyone can publish anything instantaneously without any technical knowledge. And now we're back at this. I got this job because I was one of 20 people who made little games and put them on the web back in 99. So if they wanted a game to put on their website, there weren't that many people they could talk to. There was one forum where you said, "Oh, has anyone got a game?" And I said, "Yeah, two." So I got some money. And it was because I was lucky enough to go to a school where I had a computer, I had time, I had access to unlimited bandwidth, which was quite rare at the time. And I had access to a server, so I could put this stuff up. And that made me money. Today, if I made little crappy clones of ancient games, no one would notice me. So this is the big challenge. This is what we have to tackle with everything we put on the web. So since we're talking about history, let's go through the entire history of the web. And it starts in 1844 when Ada Lovelace writes the first program for a computer that no one ever built. But they checked it, it worked, it was proper stuff, and then it took about 140 years and we got the internet, and that's like the important stuff. And it looked like this, and I think everyone recognizes this as the internet. We got a URL in a window and everyone's happy. But if like the developers in here knows that we don't really need this anymore. But that thing was important when we started doing websites because that maps straightly to how files were put on a server somewhere. So this is just telling the browser how to find the outdoor clothing for kids all the way down here. And if you ever built a website back then, you wrote all this by hand. So if you had a menu on many different pages, you had to copy paste that stuff everywhere. And then when you said, "Oh, let's add another category," you had a lot of work to do just maintaining your navigational menu, which is why people invented the CMS. And then the CMS became the project. So this still happens when we go out to meet new clients. They've usually written a long list of all the demands they have for the new upcoming web project, and then they try to find the CMS that best matches their needs, which is madness. Because this is the challenge that the CMS solves. But we're over here now. And to solve that thing, to reach an audience, to do all the things you need to do to build a good website, you can use all of this, which I won't talk about today. But is there a CMS that can tackle all that? No, of course not. Because writing a CMS, I've written 3 CMSs, I think. It's really hard. Like content management is tough. Having different roles is tough. Doing stage and production and everything, you didn't even do that back then. Like an image gallery, it's really hard to write an image gallery. And then to expect the guys that do all of this to also do perfect HTML that loads fast and is valid and works on all different things, and that have all these new stuff that it should be responsive, it should load quickly, like I say, that new data markup, there's always a new markup you need to put to optimize for Google, Facebook, or Twitter. And to expect the same thing to handle all of this is madness. But that's what it was like. And then it got even weirder because you had your website and you decided, okay, let's start selling stuff on the web. So you bought a shop system. And then you kind of, let's hook it up to the CMS and to the front end. So the shopping cart is delivered by a different system. And then you got a product information system because that's really important to have. And you connect that to the shop, of course, because product information makes sense, and to the CMS, because there will be some stuff you want to manage through the CMS, and then you want to put some of it on the website, and then you end up with this solution. That doesn't look too bad when you see it. It's quite symmetrical. It's really nice. It looks balanced. We're in control, right? But this is a lie, because then you realize, oh, we need a separate login for the resellers as well. So we build a new front end where they can see some stuff. And then customer service, they might want a slightly different front end so they can see what the person has bought and everything. And then you need the CRM with a bunch of features. Logistics, you want a new system to connect to all of this. Payments, naturally. An app, someone decided let's build an app because it happens. And then actually it's two apps because you need two apps. So now you got triple the code base to maintain. And then you connect all that to each other. And this is what it looks like. I'd say all clients we go out to meet. This is the reality now. But I'm going to use this so I don't induce stress in anyone. But how do you take this and turn it into a headless solution? Well, you do it in 3 easy steps. Step 1, you need to control the front end, obviously. So you take all this new, interesting, really tricky, hard stuff, and you take it out from the CMS. The CMS should handle content. It's even in the beginning of the TLA. It's a content management system. It shouldn't do anything with the front end. So remove that. Step 2, you take control over all these connections, and you know there's way more connections than you can see here. So you just remove them and you say, no, you're not allowed to talk to the front end anymore. No, you can't talk to each other. But should the CMS handle all that? No, that's a bad idea. So step 3 is you create an API. So to get rid of this thing, because it's a good thing, they should talk to each other, but they shouldn't do it directly like that. So to get rid of that thing, you need to make some room up here for an API. And then you build your web server where you put all this stuff. Like this is where the interesting front-end stuff happens. And that talks to the API. The API gets the data from the CMS. And all of a sudden we can get rid of this annoying line and say, hey, you're not allowed to talk to CMS anymore. You go through the API like everyone else. And now you got the basic for a headless web solution. And so what's the point of all this? Well, let's see here. If I want to add a new service to the old crappy way, as we saw, I would have to connect it to a bunch of stuff like that. Every connection increases the chances for things going disastrously wrong, I'd say. But if you do it in the headless way, you buy a new system, you make sure it can talk to the API, and you're done. Let's say you want to replace one of the services you have, because that happens quite a lot. So let's take the CRM and we buy a new fancy CRM. Problem is, in the old one, you got to the customer's last name by customer.lastname. In the new one, you use surname instead. Now, in this solution, you have to look in the shop. Do I ever call this function in the CMS? Do I ever ask about that? On the front end, do I ever ask? And you have to find all the places where you ask for the last name and change it to surname. In the new, much smarter headless way, you would update the API and then you're done. But seriously though, like, what's in it for me? Well, it's all about this thing, how you reach an audience, how you get people to engage, how you get your content in front of people. And to do that today, you have to be a lot of things. Among them, you have to be fast and present. Fast as in fast to respond. You've seen this, haven't you? The lights went out during the Super Bowl many years ago, and then they put this on Instagram instantly, and everyone liked it. It was big talk, and everyone said, okay, it was called instantaneous marketing, or so, I can't even remember the name. The thing is, it Real-time marketing, it rarely happens because it's really hard to get your stuff out on the web quickly with the landing page and measure it all. The Norwegians were even more impressive when Brad Pitt and Angelina Jolie broke up. This was the next day, full print ad in the paper, the next day. And they had this offer up and running and everything was done. So that's real-time marketing, but you rarely see it because it's so hard to get this right. Like, how long does it take to have buy search ads with a landing page, a sign up form, maybe feed all that information into your CRM, track and measure all that as soon as something interesting happens where you say, oh, actually, we could run a great campaign around this. Well, for most companies, it takes way too long, so they won't even bother. Because that should be done in hours and not days. And the benefit when you start working headless is you don't need to have one system that does all of this. You hook up new services, so you can work with the best of breed, as it's called. So you can use different services that will help you much easier. But then there's also this, you have to be fast, as in SEO fast, where they started talking now, they rank your website based on how quickly it loads, and that's a technical challenge, and it needs really disciplined front-end code. And you can use these page speed insights to see how quick you are. I went to this Search Stars SEO big conference here in Malmö. It's really good, very interesting. And they said you got 1 second to load your website. And as we all know, what 1 second to what? That's what I asked. Is it one of these? First paint, meaningful paint, first contentful paint, time to interactive. You know these values? It's different when you see stuff, when you can interact with stuff. 1 second to which one of these? No one even talked about that. Because there's a lot of things you can do, like we do on our website. If you're on a slow connection, it would look like that. So this is drawn with the scalable vector gas VG, and this as well is just CSS animation. It runs really quick, loads in no time. We could cram it in the first package, which is yeah. Now so we're down to 2 bytes. So it's actually 2 packages, and then we can start painting stuff on the screen, animating stuff on the screen, and people know, okay, I reached the website, it's up and running, and then there we go, and the entire page is loaded. So we're buying a lot of time. It's up here in 380 milliseconds, 36 milliseconds. Yeah. Anyway, you get to see all this if you go to that page insight stuff. To do this, you need to have full front-end control. There's no CMS that I know of where you can say, okay, the first 2, whatever it was, need to have just this and nothing else. Like, you need to own the front end. So that was fast. Let's talk about being present, and it's about being where your customers are. And now some people might think I'm going to start talking about social media. I won't. I'm going to talk about what I use whenever I want to go to the recycling center, take a water bus in Venice, buy ice cream in Verona, or see if a store is open. Biltema, actually. I don't use social media. I don't go to websites. I go straight to Google Maps nowadays, more and more often. And I have a real, very concrete example of this, which I kind of like. I'm from Öland, which is voted the world's most beautiful place 10 years running, I think. It looks like this most days of the year, and we eat this. This is like potato dumplings with pork inside. They're delicious. People love them. This is the queue for one of the best kroppkok place in the world. This is what it looks like in the summer. It's like 20-minute wait just to order those delicious gray things. Lovely. But I was there last Christmas visiting my parents, and I felt I need some kroppkaka. So I had a look, is it open on Christmas Day? And Google Maps said, hours might difference. They know it's a red day, as we call it in Sweden, but they don't know if they're open or not. So I had a look at this, how many people are there right now, which Google have this new fancy feature, and I saw no one. It should look a bit like this. When there's people there, there's this fuchsia color thing going on. So it wasn't, I started to suspect it's probably closed, but I wasn't sure. But then I scrolled around a bit and saw someone had asked on Google Maps, "Are you open this Christmas?" And someone else say, "No, it's closed actually, you can't go." Which, yeah. So I couldn't have Kristoffer that day. They were open the next day though, so you don't have to worry. Now, contrast this with Biltema, where I had to go and buy a new windscreen wiper, where it says these are the Christmas Day hours. They've done the right markup somehow to tell Google Maps that yes, we're open on Christmas Day. I don't make Biltema's website, so I don't know exactly what they've done, but I'm guessing it's something with proper markup somewhere. But nowadays, I've almost stopped using Google Maps because I have one of these smart speakers, so I talk to the assistant, but you can do that. You can bark commands to your phone instead of typing stuff like a caveman. And here's me asking, is Biltema currently open? And they know, you see, they know my nearest Biltema is in Lund because I was in Lund, and they know it's closed and they know when it opens. So this is where your important content is ending up. It's not just on your website or just on Facebook. It's also other places that start scraping your data and using it and serving it up. Because you contrast this with the rather nice website. I mean, it's hard to get this down to anything less. Instead of doing all this swiping and tapping, I just ask, is it open? And that's the new thing, bots and assistants. In the background is the robot. But where does the robot want to go in this thing? It wants to talk to me. And I know for a fact they want to hook up to APIs. So they know they got the correct data. They don't want to scrape stuff up here or anywhere. We don't want to let them in here. So we should have this open API, and it's a big benefit. Once you build an API, parts of it can be open, etc. And I mean, in the future, we'll see how this goes. We've seen this before, okay, virtual reality, it's going to be on the web, probably, because are you going to download stuff to your glasses like 10 years ago, looking like this? Very good. You just add another front hooked up to your API with the VR stuff. You get this much cleaner architecture. And you have this little special front end. So progressive web apps, I won't talk about that much today. I guess you all know what it is by now. It's take all the strength of native apps, combine it with all the good stuff of the web, and you get a progressive web app. So you get everything. And it weighs nothing. Here's the progressive web app for Pinterest. It's a rounding error, basically. Here's the progressive web app for Twitter. It weighs nothing, and it does basically everything that the native app does. And this, I wouldn't believe it if it wasn't Twitter themselves that show this on a stage. What is all this stuff? Anyway. So you think, oh yeah, I just build a new front and hook it up to the API? No, because the website is your PWA. Did I say PWA? Yeah, I probably did. So get rid of all that, and let's talk about page builders, because I like page builders. And now you think, oh, is that a WYSIWYG? No, it's not, because I don't like WYSIWYGs. WYSIWYGs are a lie. What you see is what you get. You don't, because you don't know what the client, do they have high resolution? Do they have the font you're using? Are they on a crappy connection, etc.? So it's not that. It's a way to tackle this sort of thing. You've seen this. There are two kinds of websites. You get this one, or you get that one. Usually it's a combination of both. You see, you have the hero, you have the little quote here by the happy customer and the big white thing and the 4 columns, and then you got the alternating pattern, and these are all the wireframes you ever need to build a website. But isn't that a bit sad with the web and all these endless possibilities? So we built this. We built much better stuff since this was a big proof of concept. We built a page builder for ourselves. So this is a page I built from scratch. It looks like this in WordPress when I build it. So you can see that stuff is this stuff. I could pick one of my blog posts and it would render like that by just picking it there. And I use Markdown because I think everyone should use Markdown all the time. Further down, that section is this section. We have some short codes because, yeah, short codes. But what I'm saying is, now that you need to be fast, you need to be able to create special tailor-made landing pages to react to things that happens. You can't just say, oh no, we don't have that template where you could put 3 spots next to each other. Oh no, you want 2 videos? No, we only have the 1 video. So of course, all our clients nowadays get the ability to build sites that look great because your content should shine without developing new templates. And I just came back from Internet i Focus today, and there's a really interesting talk you should look up about Thule, how they rebuilt. This is their start page nowadays. You recognize it? You've seen that before? But anyway, they used a lot of data to see what are people doing on our start page and how can we optimize it to make it as good as possible. And this is what they came up with. People are they just want to move further down the ladder. But then they had to build that. And with a page builder, you build this in 10 minutes. And then if it doesn't work, you rebuild it in 10 minutes. And then you use the data and you rebuild it. And also, I mean, CSS, if you haven't seen this talk by Jen Simmons, take a picture of this and look at it. It's like watching a stage magician. It's really cool. The things she does with like 4 or 5 lines of CSS, it's amazing. And it solved a real problem for us. Have you ever done this? You have an image and you have a header, and then they have padding, and you put them underneath each other, and the padding doesn't show, and all of a sudden it doesn't look that good. And Camille was having just that problem a few months ago, and I had just watched this, so I said, hey, let's solve it with CSS Grid, where you put content and you have gaps between and everything lays out perfectly. So this thing becomes this thing, which looks nice all of a sudden. And the reason we could do that was, again, because we control the front end. We built this headless thing. So by using WordPress in the background, we can control the HTML, the CSS, down to the tiniest little thing. Because that's what headless is all about. It's about creating possibilities, because we strongly believe that technology should never be an obstacle. And that's all for me. Thank you very much.